You know how the Tories are always on about us exaggerating and things don't really happen the way we say they do. You know how when we'll tell them that there are actually families where one parent is deciding not to eat in order to feed their children, yeah? When parents are skipping meals, when they're choosing between heating and eating, when they're sending their kids to school in shoes with holes in them, and they're skimping on their own food so that their children can eat. You know how the Tories always tell us that's an exaggeration, it's not really happening in 21st century Britain. Of course, it's a complete lie, it's a left-wing Trotskyist lie. No one's ever doing that. Well, listen to this, yep? Go back to the Edwardian era for me, and just let me read you a bit that I've been reading from The Ragged Trousered Philanthropists by Robert Tressel. One of the painters has just got home to his wife, and it turns out, obviously, for some time previously they'd had a child. Yeah. So just listen to this and think about this perhaps being set in an ordinary household today. Okay, this was over 100 years ago in the Edwardian era, but how many of these conversations go on like this today in a house somewhere near you when the Tories are in charge? The woman did not reply at once. She was kneeling down over the cradle, arranging the coverings which the restless movement of the child had dislodged. She was crying silently, unnoticed by her husband. For months past, in fact ever since the child had been born, she had been existing without sufficient food. If Easton was unemployed, they had to stint themselves so as to avoid getting further into debt, unless it was absolutely necessary. When he was working, they had to go short in order to pay what they owed. But of what there was, Easton himself, without knowing it, always appeared to have the greater share. It was at work. If he was at work, she would pack his dinner basket overnight, the best there was in the house. When he was out of work, and she often pretended that she gave him his meal. She often pretended that she'd had hers while he was out. All the time the baby was draining her life away, and her work never seemed done. She felt very weak and weary as she crouched, crying and furtively trying not to let him see her. At last, without looking round, she said, "You quite well know that you're just as much in favour of getting them as I was." She's talking about some furniture. If we hadn't got the oilcloth, there would have been illness in the house because of the way the wind used to come up between the floorboards. Even now, on a windy day, the oilcloth moves up and down. "Well, I'm sure I don't know," said Easton, as he looked alternatively at the list of debts and the three letters. "If you give them nearly every farthing I earn, I never interfere about anything, because I think it's your part to attend to the house. But it seems to me that you don't manage things properly." The woman suddenly burst into a passion of weeping, laying her head on the seat of the chair as he was standing near the cradle. Easton started up in surprise. "What's the matter?" he said. Then he looked down upon the quivering form of the sobbing woman, and he was ashamed. He knelt down by her, embracing her and apologising, promising that he had not meant to hurt her like that. "I always do the best I can with the money," Ruth sobbed. "I never spend a farthing on myself, but you don't seem to understand how hard it is. I don't care nothing about not having to go without things myself, but I can't bear it when you speak to me like you do lately. You seem to blame everything on me. You used to speak to me much like that before. You never used to speak to me like that before. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I wish I could lie down somewhere and sleep and never wake up." Remember that? I wish I could lie down somewhere and sleep and never wake up. That, as I constantly tell you, Ragged Trousered Philanthropists, written more than 100 years ago. And what will the Tories tell you? Arbecht macht frei. Work makes you free. Terrible.